Howdy, everybody. I am JR from West Virginia and Commonplace. Now, there comes a point in life when stress comes, we get hit by things, our mental health turns into a crisis. And when our mental health turns into a crisis, some of us have quick answers that we think are quick fixes, like when you break a vase or vase and you try to put it all back together. It goes back together, but it still has cracks and it has functions and it has certain areas to it that make it imperfect in some people's eyes, but in our mental health, we think that it's perfect. But sometimes we need that extra help. And today I have with me an amazing lady named Phyllis Leavitt, who has a book, America in Therapy, that we're going to talk with her about that. And she has a background that I'll let her discuss in just a moment because I don't want to go give away everything in the very beginning. So, Phyllis, you have the floor. And the normal question that we ask is nostalgic, who is Phyllis Leavitt? But we're going to do this question today. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background as a psychotherapist and how you got to where you wanted to be one?
Yeah. Well, growing up, I never even heard about psychotherapy until I was an adult because nobody talked about it when I was a kid. But I had some childhood trauma that I had buried and did not really have any clue what was troubling me as I grew up. But something was clearly troubling me. And to make a long story very short, um, by the time I had three little children, I was kind of in, maybe you would say I hit rock bottom in terms of depression and feeling like I really just didn't know where to turn. And I ended up in therapy, and it really changed my life. I started to remember what happened to me. I started to reprocess what happened to me. I began to realize that there was this, and I had always felt like there was some essential part of me that couldn't find its way into expression in the world and wasn't seen either because I had buried it to protect myself. And, after recovering the memories of what had happened to me and starting to recover my connection to my own essential goodness, um, I decided to become a psychotherapist, and that's how my career began. And I think it, you know, as much as none of us wants any pain in our lives, I think sometimes when you've gone through something, it makes you more compassionate with other people. And I think that was one of the things that helped me in being a psychotherapist, that I had a deep understanding from my own personal experience and not just graduate school.
Okay, and I thank you for that. Now, this is a side question. This is a question from Nancy all the way out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. She wanted this because what we do on the show is now we poll people. Like when we decide that we want you to be a guest on the show, we tell them a little bit about you. And we ask our audience for a question. And this is her question because she has an issue with generational trauma and something that she entitled systematic trauma. And she wanted to know that, from your personal experience, did you suffer from a systematic trauma, something that, just followed like that way? Or was it a generational trauma that probably that was passed from a parent or a sibling down to you or something like that?
Well, I'm not sure what systematic is, or maybe she meant systemic. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
systemic. I think yeah, maybe systemic. I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
But I think what and this is actually a great question because it's part of why I wrote the book America in Therapy, because on a personal level, I definitely suffered from something that was intergenerational, that was just unhealed and not even identified in my own family. Um, but one of the reasons why I wrote my book is because I think many, many, many of us suffer from systemic trauma, and this may or may not be what she's referring to, and you can correct me if it's not. Um, but in the systems, in the family systems we all live in, not just our own family of origin, but the beliefs and the practices in our communities, in our places of worship, in our schools, in our businesses, in our states, and in our federal government, if the systems themselves are not operating on healthy family dynamics, which are designed to have some kind of a healthy family, and again, none of us is perfect. There's no perfect, but in a more or less healthy family, there's some conscious ongoing balancing between the good of the whole and the good of the individual. And one isn't sacrificed to the other. And what I see happening in America today, both as a psychotherapist, I've seen this in so many families of origin, and I see it at the very highest levels of authority and um, influence in our country today, is that many of the behaviors and mindsets and beliefs that people in positions of authority have are not healthy, and they hurt a lot of people, just the way someone who's dysfunctional or abusive in a family can really cause devastating harm to the family members. And so I wanted to do that, really bring that out in my book, the correlation between the microcosm of the individual and individual family and the macrocosm of the country, and address both, because at this point, I think in our lives, they're really interconnected.
Okay, and that was stimulating right there. That was probably the gem in the episode thus far. Now, for me, just to throw a little bit in here, I get what you're saying because I've had this incident happen with me real quick. Me and some friends were getting into we do these deep conversations, and we were talking about you have your normal family, then you have a chosen family that you have made with friends, and it can even be family members that are distant. And then we were talking about healing family, these people that help you heal, like someone like you, for instance you would become part of my healing family. And it was odd that we found that the place that we first learned love was not necessarily the place that we ended up staying in love. So, my question to you, this is personal for me now, is how can I accept the people that taught me a form of love or a form of caring? Oh, maybe not so much empathetic or sympathetic. How do I address these people and fix that trauma that was there? Because the trauma came in that they taught me a falsehood in love, and as I got older I developed and I found a love that's mine, but it's not with my family, it's with my friends
Yeah.
and with this healing team
Mhm.
or healing family.
That's definitely true for me as well. I think, I mean, I think everybody has their own healing journey, and there's no one size of forgiveness or, freedom from the past that fits every person. But what I would say in general, both from my own experience and from being a psychotherapist for so many, many years, over 30 years, is that to the extent that I was able to heal myself and sort of recover from the worst impact of what had happened to me, the less the people that I was hurt by mattered in a way. I mean, they're my family and I care about them, um, but I'm not impacted in the same way by them. I don't need their love or their acceptance in the way that I thought I really did at one time in my life. And and the way I say it is, and if you just feel forgiveness for somebody, great. But I don't ever recommend that people just try to forgive, because sometimes people are not ready to do that. What I think is a more valuable approach is to just be with the truth of what happened. Be with your truth of what happened and be with the truth of your own recovery. And if that leads you to feel deep forgiveness for other people, great. And if it doesn't, it's okay. We're human. That's how I see it.
Oh man, too many gems thus far. Now, one other thing that we do on the show is we do something that's very nostalgic. It's called the shameless plug. And a shameless plug, because we've got a little series right there, is to the audience that's here right now, because we have a low attention span audience, and then we have one that has a normal attention span, or I'm sorry, not normal. We don't use normal anymore. An optimal attention span. Could you please tell them where they can meet and greet you across the internet and where they can find this amazing book that will be released in the summer?
Right. And it's already, you can already order it. It's available for pre-order. It'll be released on July 2nd of this year, 2024. You can find me at my website, www.phyllisleavitt.com, and that's PhyllisLeavitt. I'm on LinkedIn, and I have lots of conversations on YouTube. I have lots of conversations and blogs and other things about my book on my website. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and really, if you want more information than we have time to cover, contact me on my website. I'm really happy to talk with anyone and share more information. I just put up a free PDF on my website that's called The 6 Secrets of Repairing Relationship After Conflict. And if you sign in for contact me or my newsletter, you get the free PDF, and it's chock full of really, I think, really valuable information gleaned over many years of my experience. And it's also part of one of the chapters of my book.
Okay, okay, and I like that. Thank you for that. Now, what everybody's been waiting for. We're about to dive into American therapy. Now, your book offers a unique approach to addressing the challenges our nation faces. Can you provide a brief overview of the key themes and the messages you convey in this book? And the last thing that I would like you to add in here, if you need me to repeat any of that, I can. Um, I want to know a little bit about the process that it took to write this, because this sounds like this is a book that was helping you at the same time as you were writing it.
Yeah. I wrote this book. I had the idea for this book a long time ago, when just from the idea that if I was suffering so much from the really hurtful things that happened to me from other people, then there's millions of people in the world suffering the way that I was, and probably some of them much more. That have been in wars or have never been able to find safety or have never been able to have help to heal. Um, and so I began to realize that there's PTSD as part of our part of the condition of humanity right now. And what I learned both as a client myself and as a psychotherapist is that when people don't get help for being hurt by other human beings, they inevitably have some kind of symptoms. Some of them are more socially acceptable than others. A person might become a people pleaser or very driven to succeed. That's all coming out of trying to compensate for not feeling like they're a worthwhile human being. But we don't generally target that as a problem unless the person does themselves. But there are lots of other symptoms for people who are mistreated and abused and really seriously hurt or discriminated against, um, like deep depression, paralyzing anxiety, agoraphobia, addiction, isolation, and aggression. And one of the many things I really highlight in my book is that while there are a whole host of symptoms, and I haven't named them all, um, there are 2 patterns that we really see that come out of unhealed abuse and neglect on whatever level. It could be emotional abuse, it could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, alienation, um, abandonment, whatever the abuse or neglect is. If a person gets no help, they tend to fall into 2 categories. And of course, there's no one size fits all. And let me say that again. There are lots of people who don't fit the categories that I talk about. And sometimes there's reasons for that. But the 2 big categories, and I see this in so many clients, and I see this now mushrooming in our country, and that is people tend to become either helpless because they were truly overpowered and they couldn't resist or get help or escape, or they identify with the aggressor because they're so um, afraid of their own vulnerability that they have to cover it up with aggression. And that's a role model that they learned as a way to survive. And we have more and more people in this country, both on the individual level and on like in positions of power, who are either easily dominated or very dominating. And so you see masses of people now, and we see this all over the news, who will go along with something even if they don't believe in it because they're so afraid to oppose the powers that be. Or there's people who identify with the bully on the playground in national conversation and national politics or national positions of authority, who are acting out their own unhealed wounds of aggression on countless numbers of people. And I really felt like I needed to bring this to public attention because it's a mental health issue. It's not an ideological issue, it's a mental health issue. And I'll just tell you the nutshell of that, and I go into great detail, when I talk further about it. But the nutshell reason why I say it's a mental health issue is because mentally healthy people don't assault other human beings. They don't deprive them of their rights. They don't perpetrate injustice knowingly. They don't attack, murder, kill, wage war. They don't. And so it's really a mental health issue, and we're being told it's an ideological issue. This group opposed to that group, and whose side are you on? But mentally healthy people, and I say this all the time, and if we're talking through a psychological lens, which is what I do, the whole field of psychology is nonpartisan. It's not about choosing a side and hoping one person's going to win. Psychology is all about reconnecting with ourselves and peacefully and lovingly and safely connecting with the people in our world to the extent that we can do that. It's all about repair of relationship. It's not about somebody beating somebody else at the game. And so I see psychology and mental health as the big missing piece in national conversation and politics today. And that's really why I wrote this book.
And that is beautiful. Like that right there, like this has just become my favorite episode I think I've ever done. Like because you were so insightful and like the way that you took the ideology out of what people are conditioned to, what our news conditions people to. And I hate to say that it is the news, it's the news and the social media that conditions people to feel this way and then motivates them to move that way. And I thank you for that. Now, my next question for you here is, and this is for authors, because authors need this help here. Writing this type of book causes two things to happen to you. And these two things are an evolution and a wastefulness. The evolution is that you're growing and growing in the concept. The wasteful part that comes in is that you have to let go of a few layers of stuff. And the wasteful part is not a negative. It means you have to let a few layers off like a onion. You have to take a few things off because we were all conditioned this way and you had to let these things go. So I want to commend you for that. So my question to you is, as you got further and further into writing this book, and then you got to the completion of this book, what changed from day one to the end date of finishing the book? What changed inside of you?
A lot of things, but I'll tell you because I think I'm probably not alone as an author in this. I've always been a writer in some small way, but I wrote 120,000 words of this book all on my own, and I had no idea what to do with it or how to put it together and actually make it a book. And so I sought out a professional writing coach, and I ended up writing the entire book from scratch again. And it was a completely different book. And why that relates to your question is because I wrote the first book totally and only as a psychotherapist, kind of assuming very naively that if people read what I wrote about families and family systems and the effects on people of either healthy or unhealthy dynamics, that they would just get the correlation to our government. But the person that I worked with from day one said to me, you have to have a bigger voice. You have to actually name what's going on in our larger, I call it the family of America, but in our larger family systems, because that's what people really need to hear. So it was an incredible growth journey for me to do that. I never imagined myself being sort of out of the safety of my own little office and my own little life. And all of a sudden, here I am, a psychotherapist talking to, what I hope will be a national audience and actually even beyond our country, because what's happening here is happening all over the world.
Yes, it is. Wow. 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 Now, you mentioned that we are on a collision course with our own extinction. Sorry about that. Viewing it as a national and global mental health crisis, you've already elaborated pretty much on some good points with that. So I'm going to swing it this way. In your own life, when did you hit this collision course?
Yeah, I think it's when I said that after my third child was born, I was in a deep depression. And I really, on an emotional level, I really didn't want to be here anymore. I just felt so stuck. And I was in a very, very unhappy marriage at that time, and that was a lot of it. But I never would have left my children. I had no plan of hurting myself, but that's how bad I really felt. And it was a very, and I think a lot of people have this kind of turning point in their life where you just sort of hit a bottom. And I actually prayed for help. I prayed for help, and I felt like I got it.
Okay, okay. Now, I pay homage to a news magazine called 2020. As a
Mm.
child, as an adult growing up, I had John Stossel on there as a comedic relief. Diane Sawyer was a poignant interviewer. To me, she was better than anyone else on that show. Elizabeth Vargas was very well rounded and she gave questions that helped the show flow. But there was a woman, the late great Barbara Walters. She knew how to be personable with whoever she was interviewing, and if the interview was going well, the news station would let it run over till about 11:05. If the interview was so-so, which she had some that were so-so, it cut off at 11 o'clock. We all remember those times because that was one of the news magazines. It was either that or 60 Minutes you watched. And if you didn't watch that, I guess it was Dateline and one of those. But Phyllis, it's time for you to get on the hot seat. Are you ready for your 2020 questions?
For sure.
All right. So here's the John Stossel. Here's a fun question. In life, with the type of mental health services that you offer, with the mental health services that have been offered to you, you have made a way to streamline it into a book. And that's amazing. I want to tell you thank you for that. But was there ever an instance where there was an opposition in your life, and that's where it gets funny, that held you back for a little bit, but you jumped over it and you look back on it now and you're like, why did I make such a big deal out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody who tries to have a loud voice in this world, and again, that was a big learning for me because I didn't want to have a loud voice, um, is going to meet opposition somewhere. And I fully expect to meet some kind of opposition around my book. And I think that's okay. But I did have a very profound experience where I shared something very personal about my process, or I shared about my process in an environment that was kind of like a non-denominational church. Wasn't really a church, but it was a non-denominational place of coming together to pray and support one another. And I
Yes.
shared something that I guess I don't even know what it was, honestly, that I shared that rubbed a couple of people the wrong way. But um, I was told that they didn't want me to ever come back.
Whoa.
Share. Not I could come back to the community, but they didn't want me to share. And it was painful, you know, um, and you know what? It was a great experience. Honestly, it was a great experience because it really caused me to turn within and know my own truth and know the value of what I shared. There was nothing that I shared that wasn't extremely loving and kind, but it was counter to some specific person's belief system, I guess. Um,
Oh.
yeah, and so it actually helped me. It helped me because one of the things that my original coach had said to me, whenever you feel lost, you come back to your why. Why are you doing this? And I know in my heart that why I do what I do is because I love people and I love this planet. I love the earth and I have children and I have grandchildren and I want them to inherit a safe, peaceful, loving world that welcomes them and everyone. And that's why I do what I do. And that's the only reason I do what I do.
All right. And building on that, we're going to go into our Diane Sawyer question. And right there, you were actually part of when you were doing that, a collective healing process. And I thank you for expressing that because that's what I was going to lead into actually with my next question. So that's kind of ironic. Collective healing is a double-edged blade. And you just explained it right there. And you gave us an experience. So from that moment, from that collective healing, you had to go to individual healing, correct?
Right.
So when you went to that individual healing place and you went inside yourself and you seen the right and wrong in your life inside your own ecosystem, and then you saw the belief system, did this make you kind of want to shun, even though it was non-denominational, a religious place of worship? Did it make you realize or make you feel like, this is what I feel like honestly about that stuff myself? I'm born Christian. I am from Lynchburg, Virginia. So my pastor was Jerry Falwell. So I'll just put that out there. So when I say that, that's a cringe for some, and it's a Billy Graham happy smile for some. So those set beliefs are things that are set in stone how they feel about things. So we didn't have a voice or an opinion. You just had to follow what was said or follow what was contingent with the Bible. So sometimes that made it feel like we were a part of a cult. And I will say that. Now I'm a non-denominational Christian, and I will go flow with anybody that's around. I follow the Bible. I don't follow man's intuition or anything like that. So my expression on what happened to you is I had a similar situation happen. So that's what took me away from the church. And there's nothing that will ever bring me back to it, because I know that no matter what I do, I'm always going to have those foster thoughts about that. And when I fostered those thoughts, it took me to a whole nother place. So my next question to you is, did this make you feel like you had to shun the church away, or did you follow this similar suit like I did and realize that the institution of thought can be processed through yourself, or the institution of a religion can be done by yourself with your own practice, as long as you're adhering to whatever morality code you decide to accept?
Totally. I mean, yeah, I mean, what I didn't feel like I needed to shun anyone. I just felt like that wasn't the place for me, you know, because I think that on this journey right now, excuse me, I like to I like to surround myself, especially with something like that, with people who are loving and kind and open-minded. But I also know those people are doing the best they can and they speak to who they speak to. It's just not the place for me. And I think we just have to meet in tolerance with our own love. And it doesn't mean we can't be self-protective or, go a different road, but what are we doing here if we become like the people who have hurt us and retaliate? We're not doing any good. And I think that's really hard for human beings. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I think this is just something we keep working at so that we don't end up being, manifesting some of the things that we're saying we don't stand for or that have hurt us. And so it's a lifelong effort. And what if our country was making that effort? That's part of my message. What if our country was making the effort not to hurt people anymore?
Okay, and then the world will be a better place. Now, this is the hardest question. This is your. We did Elizabeth or did we deal with Elizabeth Vargas? I don't know. I may have skipped one, but we're going to just go to Barbara Walters now. So here's the Barbara Walters question, and you have a glass in your hand. That glass is something that's very therapeutic. I learned this today, when people drink water and it goes down through your body, that cooling thing is your way of taking care of yourself if there's anxiety or stress. Is that correct?
Right. And actually, my throat's really dry, but well, for
Right,
what?
right. All right. So the one thing with people that work in mental health and take care of everyone, there's a harsh thing that doesn't get addressed, and that's the mirror. When you see a mirror, you go out in the world and help everybody, but and then you tell people about the journey that you were on and that you may still be on, but you carry the weight of the world by taking care of everyone else. So when you stop, and it's at the end of the day, or it's at the end of any cycle that has helped you help other people, how do you refresh yourself? How do you get your mental stability back? How do you get your optimal health? How do you get the optimal Phyllis back?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think a lot of people in any healing profession, especially, but maybe in any high pressure profession, burn out. And I think especially when a lot of energy goes out toward other people, it's a great possibility. So I think early on in my practice, I really had to confront that because I was carrying everything home with me. And I don't know, I don't know if I can tell you how I did it because I don't know how I did it, but I learned to turn it off. I learned to turn it's like I turned a switch on when someone walked in my door and I turned it off when they left. And I also think that that was really helpful to me because if I saw 6 people in a day, it was important that I didn't carry one session into the next and carry that in my own psyche. So I just learned to turn it off. And then the other half of that is I learned to do, well, I was already doing, but I learned to put more focus on the things that really nurtured me. And I love nature, so I always had a garden. I had plants. I had some animals. I had my kids. I ended up getting remarried. That's a great source of love and comfort for me. Um, so all of those things, I think you need to make it a practice to feed yourself good food, whatever that is. Exercise, I like to hike in nature. Um, you need to replenish. You need to put gas in your engine. We all
Okay.
we all need that, right?
Yes, we do. Now it comes a portion of the show where we get almost to the end where I give a testimony. And this testimony is about you, Phyllis. We met earlier. I do a fake pre-call at the beginning of the show before we start, which is very quick and quaint. That way we can make the conversation organic. And I will tell you, this has been one of the best interviews I've ever done. I want to just give you that first off. So here's a thing. I use a lot of different terms. I use perseverance, fortitude. So we're going to go ahead and go with perseverance first. Perseverance for you, you did something that is very hard for humans, for androids, for anyone to do. You identified issues from your past that haunted you and you put them full circle. You got in, you made systems, plans, integration into your mental psyche to make yourself optimize for what you were put here to do, and that is to help people through their crisis and different things, and to give a rationale to a certain area of the mind that people don't use. Sort of like the best word I can use is an aspect. That's the word I'll use for this one. Your aspect helps people see things that they don't normally see. Your aspect ratio, we'll use that. And in doing so, it took some hurt, it took some pain, it was some good, bad, and ugly in between there, but you survived it. And surviving it and not letting it kill you. And when I say kill you, I'm not talking about yourself in the physical matter. I'm talking about yourself in the mental and spiritual matter. Is
I relate to that actually. Not let it kill you. I relate to that.
is above and beyond a lot of people, because some people let it kill them and they become a drone. They become that android I was just talking about. They become something, or not android, they become a robot. They become a person that goes through motions in life and doesn't deal. And you dealt, and you keep dealing, and you keep going. Perseverance, like I said, that's another word I use quite a bit. That perseverance you had to have was something you had to do on your own, that you had to scale Mount Everest yourself with the help of the religious entities also. But you had to scale that. And once you scaled to the top and you got there, you didn't stop there. You went to the next peak and you keep going. And the evolution from that is your book. The evolution from that is the counseling services that you can offer and that you do offer and have offered. Now, here goes the fortitude. The fortitude comes in play, or we'll say, well, yeah, we'll use fortitude is real simple and it's real strong like this. You knew that there were issues and you dealt with them. And doing that is harder than any type of algebraic expression or any type of common knowledge that we're taught, because what you dealt with were not taught. It's something that we're conditioned not to do. And be it whenever it happened to you and how it happened, it was something that happened to you before COVID. So because a lot of people have come into this mindfulness stuff during COVID, but listening to your story, this is something that you learned a long time ago. So this makes you a whole different breed of mental health advocacy that has gotten lost in translation, which there's nothing wrong with people that have found themselves during COVID, but that's a whole different stretch. That's a trauma that all of us had to deal with. So
Mm-hmm.
we know how to react to it. But what you went through is a different type of trauma. It was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
There was not an access then. And
Right.
now there's an access now. So what you're doing here is a piece of history at one spot, and then it's this mental health on the other side. So when you get up in the morning tomorrow, or if you look in the mirror today, put a smile on your face. Fix your shoulder, fix your shirt, whatever you got to do. Do what you want to do with your beautiful curly hair. And just know this. You know the gratitude that comes from people that you help, but know that the invisible gratitude that you don't see, it shows in your face. It shows in the smile that's in your face. It shows when you open your eyes. It shows when you move your eyebrows back and when you sway your hair in the wind. So you are what we call a walking stroke of genius.
You are so kind. You are so kind. Thank you for all that.
And, the further you go on in life, and when life excels beyond this plane, you're going to be remembered for all of these great merits, and you'll be known for the bad merits too, because we all have good, bad, and ugly. But the thing here is that I need you to concentrate on this and continue this, because you already have it in your expression, because you don't have a linear expression. Your expression goes everywhere, so that's a great thing. Is this that you have a power that no one else has, and that is to form mental stability.
Mm.
To make mental stability, and mind you, I'm not a counselor or anything like that, but I deal with so many different people doing these shows, over 500 plus shows. It's certain people you can see that aura, and you have that aura. A better word to use is you have that enigma, and
Mm.
that enigma cannot be manufactured. It can't be produced. It's just something that comes and that's built from trauma. And I hate to use that word, but it is.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you so much for that, and I want you to carry that out in the world and just keep doing what you're doing, because you're powerful. And nobody can take that power from you. You know that. I don't even have to preach that to you, because that's what you say to other people. But sometimes it's better to get your flowers and know it now than to go on with life and never know it. So I want to thank you for that, Phyllis.
Well, thank you so much. And, I just want to say, like, it's I tend to like not take credit for anything. So I want to just really receive the beauty of what you shared with me. And I also want to say that I don't think all the credit is mine. And I want to say that in a celebratory way. I was born like this. I just was, through the grace of spirit or whatever you call it. I just was born very persevering. I don't think that it's something that I learned or that I really was born that way. And I've just always had a great desire to know the truth, even when it was a total mystery to me. And I don't know if you ever read Carl Rogers, but he was a psychotherapist back in the day. He's I think he's gone now, but I remember one line from one of his wonderful books, and it was, "The truth is always your friend." And I've never forgotten that line. I believe the truth is always our friend, even if it's difficult, even if it's confrontational, even if it causes us to really need to make some changes or, go on an inner exploration or whatever it requires. And sometimes, of course, it's just wonderful. But that's been a motto in my life. And again, I don't do it perfectly at all, but I come back to that over and over again, and I really do just try to face things. But what I really want to say is, we're not in this alone. There were many people along the way that helped me. I didn't do it all by myself. And that's one of the things that I've always said to clients who are like, people will come in sometimes and they'll say, well, I don't want to be too dependent on you. I don't want to depend on therapy too much. And there's this idea we're supposed to be able to do it all ourselves if we're really like strong people or we have it together. And I always say, why not? We really need each other. If we have a broken heart, we need to heal that with another loving human being.
Man, that is powerful. So on that note, audience, the great thing about these shows are you can go into the show notes and you will be able to find amazing information about Phyllis Leavitt. And then there's anything extra that we need to put in the notes, I'll get from her after the show's done. You will never know, but I will know that we got extra stuff to put in there. And one thing I want you guys to concentrate on when this book comes out, and this is something that PR firms do not teach their clients, and people have forgotten, because a lot of people have been out of school as long as I've been out of school for 20 years, at least high school. um, if you're in a state capital in the United States, you can request that book at the Capitol Library, and the
Mm.
Capitol Library will buy those books for every county in those states. For example, if you live in the great state of West Virginia, there's 1.5 million people here, 55 counties, but 112 libraries. So, in turn, buy her book, but then go to your state capital, which is Charleston for us, and get that book ordered so that everyone in the county can have it. And it's immortalized, and it'll be a piece, a literary history, and it will be a literary device that can help people in life and it can save a life. And on that note, I'm JR and she's Phyllis, and we
Thank
are
you.
signing off.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.